Deion Sanders sends stern message to Colorado Buffaloes players as problems persist. With the clock ticking down on another turbulent season in Boulder, Deion coach Prime Sanders has delivered his most forceful message yet to his Colorado Buffaloes team. A challenge not rooted in talent or tactics, but in accountability. The Buffaloes, now sitting at 3-7 and officially out of bowl contention, have 2 games remaining in what has become a defining test of leadership and resolve. And for Sanders, the priority has shifted from salvaging wins to salvaging culture. In a passionate address captured by well-off media, Sanders stood before his team at practice and stripped away the excuses, issuing a direct and uncompromising challenge. "We got a bunch of guys in this group right here that really care, that really believe," Sanders said. "We got several guys that don't. And guess what? I know who you are. I'm not going to call you out. I'm not going to identify you because you've already identified yourself in the way you go about your job, the way you go about your preparation, the way you run your mouth in the locker room." It was a line drawn firmly in the turf, a message that the time for talk has long passed. The message: are you part of the problem or the solution? If there's one thing Deion Sanders has never lacked, it's conviction. But as the losses have piled up, so too has his frustration with complacency and inconsistency inside his locker room. During practice this week, Sanders posed a simple yet piercing question to his players, one that may very well determine how they close out the 2025 campaign. "Are you part of the problem or the solution?" he asked. Many of you are going to say, "I'm part of the solution," but it's hard to be part of the solution when you're part of the problem. It wasn't just a motivational soundbite. It was a wake-up call, the kind of question that forces athletes to look in the mirror. Throughout this season, Sanders has walked a delicate line between inspiration and confrontation. Early in his tenure, his voice brought energy and belief. Now it's carrying an edge sharpened by disappointment. The message this time wasn't wrapped in charisma or charm. It was the raw, unfiltered truth of a coach desperate to weed out entitlement and reinstate accountability. The turning point: a glimpse of progress in West Virginia. Despite the tough love, there are signs that Sanders' message is beginning to break through. In their most recent game, a 29-22 road loss to West Virginia, the Buffaloes showed flashes of discipline and heart. Quarterback Julian "Juju" Lewis, a freshman thrown into the spotlight after weeks of offensive instability, showed poise and promise. Lewis completed 22 of 35 passes for 299 yards and 2 touchdowns, marking one of the team's more balanced offensive outings in recent weeks. For Sanders, the effort wasn't enough to erase the loss, but it offered something he's been searching for all season: progress. "Some of you, it seems like you've gained mobility and you're still soaring up, and I love it," Sanders told his team. Yo-yo offensive lineman Yehia Atia is one of those guys. Number 10 Lewis is one of those guys. Some of you youngsters are still on the climb. But even amid improvement, Sanders couldn't ignore the troubling trends: the lack of consistency, the lack of buy-in from certain veterans, and the erosion of leadership within the locker room. "Some of you are taking the personalities of some of you older guys that should be teaching you and should be reaching you, and they're taking you along their path," he warned. "You gotta disconnect and grab on to something whole." Leadership vacuum and locker room reality. It's no secret that Colorado's 2025 campaign has been defined as much by internal turbulence as by on-field struggles. After a promising 9-4 finish in 2024, expectations for year 3 under Coach Prime were sky high. But as the season unfolded, the Buffaloes found themselves battling not just opponents, but a crisis of leadership. Outside of a few standouts, including left tackle Jordan Seaton, safety Tawfiq Bayard, defensive end Arden Walker, and kicker Alejandro Mata, consistent voices of leadership have been scarce. And for a coach who built his reputation on culture and mindset, that's an alarming trend. Sanders' message this week was aimed directly at that void. He didn't name names, But the subtext was clear. Colorado's veterans, the very players who should be setting examples, have too often modeled mediocrity instead of mastery. It's the kind of cultural infection that no amount of scheme adjustments can fix, one that requires players to choose between comfort and accountability. We coming meets we struggling. When Deion Sanders first arrived in Boulder, his now iconic declaration, "We coming," became a rallying cry. It symbolized ambition, belief, and a refusal to accept the status quo. But this season, as the Buffaloes sit near the bottom of the Big 12 standings, that slogan has taken on a different tone. For Sanders, it's no longer about coming. It's about staying disciplined, staying committed, staying resilient even when the hype fades. The challenge now isn't just about recruiting talent. It's about cultivating toughness. That's why Sanders' latest message feels less like a speech and more like a reckoning. He knows his players are at a crossroads, one where they can either recommit to the program's vision or risk becoming part of the revolving door of transfers that has already defined his tenure. The new face of Colorado's offense, Julian "Juju" Lewis. If there's a silver lining to Colorado's late-season turbulence, it's the emergence of Julian "Juju" Lewis. Thrown into the fire after transfer quarterback Kaidon Salter failed to meet expectations, the freshman has quickly become the team's emotional center. Lewis' growth has been visible even in defeat. His confidence, mobility, and command have given Colorado fans a glimpse of what the future could look like. Sanders has repeatedly praised the young quarterback's attitude and work ethic, describing him as one of the few players still climbing. "Juju's one of those guys," Sanders said. "He's locked in, he wants it, and he's not afraid to lead." If Colorado is to finish the season strong, with games remaining against Arizona State and Kansas State, it will likely rest on Lewis' continued development. Arizona State, now without injured quarterback Sam Leavitt, presents a winnable matchup. Kansas State, meanwhile, has been one of the Big 12's most inconsistent teams this year. Coach Prime's challenge, rebuilding belief amid adversity. What makes Sanders' message so striking isn't its tone, it's its timing. Most teams sitting at 3-7 out of bowl contention would already be mentally checked out. But Sanders refuses to let that happen. Instead, he's reframing these final two games as an audition for commitment, a test of who truly belongs in his locker room next season. "We got a bunch of guys who really care and really believe," Sanders reminded them, "but several who don't, and I know who you are." That's not just talk. Sanders has already shown a willingness to overhaul his roster before, and few doubt he'll do it again. If his message doesn't spark a stronger finish, this offseason could bring another wave of roster turnover as Coach Prime retools his program for 2026. From motivation to maturation, this moment, perhaps more than any flashy win or viral clip, might define the evolution of the Coach Prime era. The early chapters were about belief, energy, and transformation. This one is about maturity, both for Sanders as a coach and for his players as young men. The days of the Prime show are fading, replaced by something grittier, more introspective. Colorado football isn't just a spectacle anymore. It's a case study in leadership, perseverance, and the hard realities of rebuilding in college sports' most ruthless conference. If Sanders' message lands the way he intends, the final weeks of the season could be less about wins and losses and more about foundation, about finding out who's truly committed to the climb. The final stretch, playing for pride and the future. With only 2 games remaining, Colorado's path forward is clear. Play with pride, finish strong, and prove that the foundation of the Prime era is still intact. "Some of you are still soaring, and I love it," Sanders told his players. "But some of you are following the wrong examples. You gotta disconnect and grab onto something whole." For Sanders, that something whole isn't just football, it's culture. It's the belief that discipline and accountability, not just talent, build legacies. And as he's shown time and time again, from Jackson State to Boulder, he's not afraid to rebuild, reteach, and restart until the message sticks. Colorado's bowl hopes are gone, but its identity isn't. If Coach Prime's message finds its mark, the Buffaloes could finish not as a team defined by disappointment, but as one rediscovering its direction. Because for Deion Sanders, leadership has never been about avoiding the storm. It's about standing in it and saying, let's fix this together.